crafty friends, welcome back. This is Laura from Crafty Not Shifty, and today I'm sharing with you my extremely delayed Love from Lizi 10 cards 1 kit video for July. Good news, this is so delayed that if you're seeing this for the first time and you're thinking, I have to get my hands on one of those kits, then don't worry because next month's kit goes on sale tomorrow. So you can go ahead and use the links in the description below to reserve your subscription. Or you can go ahead and wait until tomorrow and check out the release and all the add-ons and then click on those links for your shopping. So this kind of serves as a diary reminder. So the reason this video is so very late is that this has been an incredibly hectic month for me. I was away at Junkie Fest, which was a wonderful experience, and I got to do some teaching and meet a whole bunch of crafty friends, and I'm hoping to share a little bit more about that with you in an upcoming video. But now let's jump in to the cards. You'll notice that I did include some extra white cardstock when making these cards this month. I was just feeling that kind of white background base, and I really wanted to use the colours that were included in the kit for a lot of matting and layering. Okay, so let's jump in with the first card. I'm going ahead and sticking down a card panel to a laminated piece of cardstock, and then I have this beautiful stencil lid on top, and I'm grabbing my Distress Oxide ink in Cracked Pistachio and a Picket Fence Studio blending brush, and I'm just gently blending that colour, working in a large circular motion so that the colour is most intense near the centre of that kind of ray burst or sunburst, and then sort of lightens off towards the edges. I'm not actually covering the entire background. I mean, obviously I'm not covering the parts that are masked, but even the areas that aren't masked, I'm allowing that to fade to white. So it's just this subtle pattern in the background. And then, of course, wherever there's a line or an edge, there is a peel off. So I'm going to go ahead and stick down one of my peel-offs. I honestly used so many different peel-offs in this video, I don't specifically remember which ones came with the kit, but I'm pretty sure I used the ones that came with the kit at some point, but I also pulled from my stash. So I'm using one of the sentiments. Again, I had the stamp set from the kit, but also the add-ons. So you'll see a bit of a mix and match here. And then I grabbed one of the ephemera pieces and I just layered that up with some double-sided foam tape so I could go ahead and add some dimension to this piece. So I love that sentiment. Life is better in a bikini. That is definitely true, although we're pretty much in bikini season and I definitely haven't seen the inside of a gym for a good 15 years. So yeah, but life's better in a bikini. So I grabbed some of the cardstock that was included in the kit, cut that down to be my card panel. The white piece is ever so slightly smaller. All of the cards that I made today are 4 1/4 by 5 1/2. And as I said, I pulled in some extra white cardstock to work as my card bases because I wanted to focus on using the coloured paper as my matting and layering pieces. So I'll go ahead and stick that down. Super quick and easy, really nice, simple design for that first card. So sticking with this theme of nice and simple, quick and easy cards, for the second card I've trimmed down one of the pattern paper pieces. This one's beautiful. It's got all these different popsicles, as I was told they should be called on my last video. So we have a debate here in the region where I live as to whether or not they're ice lollies or lolly ices. However, obviously a lot of you guys watching are from the States, so everyone was letting me know that you guys call them popsicles. So you can see I had a little bit of a fight with this, trying to get it stuck down exactly where I wanted, but once I was happy with the positioning, I just went ahead and grabbed some holographic peel-offs. You know that rainbow holographic is my favourite colour, so I had to go ahead and use that, and this time in the gold, which I usually lean more towards the silver, but I felt like the gold worked really well with the faux gold glitter that's included in this pattern paper design. Of course, I'm saving those little pieces by sticking them back onto the backing sheet. And then I'm going to go ahead and grab some of the bubble peel-offs. and I'm just going to lay those right up against that first design. So I'm actually building up two of the different peel off designs. We have the pinstripes, which is the original, the classic design, and then this is the newest design, the bubbles. And I don't know why I said bubbles so strangely there, but there we go, the bubbles, and just laying those down next to the pinstripe. If any of those little pieces get stuck inside of the release holes, you can go ahead and pick those out after you've stuck everything down. Here I have one of the sentiment stickers. I love these sentiment stickers. I think they're wonderful. I love the dimension, I love the shine, and I love the way they are completely see-through, apart from obviously where the text is, so you can actually create whatever kind of a background you want. For this one, I grabbed some gold washi tape and stuck that down. I had to kind of fight with it a little bit because of the texture to get it to stick, but once it stopped trying to stick to my fingers and realised that I wanted it to stick to the sticker, I was able to trim off the excess and stick that down. So then I trimmed off the excess card, and that is the second one. Oh, not yet. I've got to add some card candy. I love that Lizzie called these card candy. That is exactly what they look like. I love the colours, and you know I love adding dimension. So I grabbed one of each of the sizes in two of the colours and just added that little extra detail at the top and the bottom. And I think these match really well with the nail varnish I have on in this video. It is a matte pink. I usually go super glossy, and yeah, I'm enjoying the matte, so who knows, you might see more of those. Okay, and with that ramble over, the card 2 is finished. So moving into card number 3, I wanted to use a variety of different pattern papers and also that pink background piece. So I'm actually going to do some die cutting. So from the watermelon piece, which is one of my favourites, I'm using a rectangle die. And then from this kind of speckled blue piece, I'm using an oval die. And then from that final pink piece, I'm actually just using a banner die. And I don't want it to be the full length, so I'm just making it a little shorter. So I went ahead and ran those through my die cut machine. And then for the banner piece, I covered it in anti-static powder tool because I'm going to be doing some embossing, and we know that that anti-static powder helps with static cling and also to remove any oils that might be left behind on that cardstock from your fingerprints, so the embossing powder will only stick where you want it to. So I stamped down another one of the sentiments from the stamp set. Again, I'm not too sure if this came from the one in the kit or one of the add-ons because I did get them all, and it's been a little while since I did my unboxing. But here I have the sentiment stamped out, and I'm just using my heat tool to go ahead and heat emboss till that powder is good and melted and turns nice and glossy. And then I'm going to start on the assembly. You'll notice that I switch my adhesives a couple times throughout this video. Honestly, I haven't fully unpacked my craft bag from being away. I know that is pretty terrible to admit considering it's been a while, but I've been very busy. So I'm just grabbing whatever's on my desk. Sometimes it's my ATG, sometimes it is my multimedia mat, although the jar that was on my desk was running, or the bottle that was on my desk was running a little empty. So you'll see I kind of switch it up a couple times. There's no rhyme or reason to it. I'm just grabbing what's closest. So I've gone ahead and stuck everything down flat so far. So I've got this little girl from the ephemera pack. I love those ephemera pieces. In a situation like this where you want to make a super cute card and you want to make it quickly, you might not necessarily have the time to stamp out your image and colour it in, so having those ephemera pieces is a lifesaver. And it's definitely something that you can recreate, and Sandy Olnock, who was one of the guest designers this month, she did a really great job of showing how you can use the stamps and the ephemera pieces so you have your colouring inspiration. And she created some wonderful colouring. She has crazy skills and yeah, I definitely need to watch some more of her videos and see if I can pick up those skills via some kind of osmosis. But here we go. For now, I'm going to stick with the ephemera pieces when I'm in a hurry. And I decided to, of course, outline this piece with peel-offs. These are some of the iridescent sway peel-offs, so they're a little difficult to see with the camera light, but in real life they pick up the shine and just add a nice little subtle touch of detail to this piece. And then I'm grabbing my banner, which I've of course added that little watermelon slice to, and then I'm going to mount the whole thing up on a card. So with just a little bit of die cutting and some heat embossing, I mean you could switch that out for stamping if you wanted as well, we've got a really cute card that didn't take too long at all to finish. Okay, so card, I believe we are on 5 if I've kept up with my counting. I wanted to use these tassel pieces, but I wanted to do something a little different with them. So the way that they are actually made, they have a little piece that's glued down in place, and if you can manage to break that seal, then the whole thing just unravels really nicely. And then one of those actually kind of dangly tassel pieces has been folded in on itself to create the loop, so you can just go ahead and trim that off if you don't want to have a piece that has kind of a kink in it. So I went ahead and added double-sided tape onto the top section of those tassels. I wanted to lay them one on top of the other and stick them down, but I still wanted them to have some kind of free movement. So I only added the adhesive to that top section where the tassels aren't cut, and then I stuck them down to some scrap white cardstock. This was just to give me something to stick it to so I'd have a base to work on without having to work directly on my project. And then I'll just trim away all of the excess that is around this. So I've kind of created one individual piece that I'll then be able to stick down. So you'll see what I mean here if my explanation didn't make too much sense. I'm just using my scissors to trim away any of that white cardstock that sticks out the sides, and then I have a nice smooth even piece along the back that I can use to add my adhesive to stick this to my card. So here on the card base I've stuck down some patterned paper, and I'm actually going to use the rest of that patterned paper to cover the top section. Now it's probably not necessary to stick something down to the bottom because the tassels cover it, but because they are kind of free to move around, I wanted to have something behind there other than just the white card base, just in case somebody kind of moves those tassel pieces and sees what's behind there. So to help build up the card base to the same dimension, those tassel pieces are pretty thick. I actually used 2 layers of craft foam, and I've just stuck that down to my card base and then trimmed away the excess using my long scissors. So then I'm going to go ahead and grab my ATG and apply adhesive all the way around this piece and then stick that down directly on top of the craft foam, and it also overlays the tassels slightly. So this is a pretty thick card, however I think it's got some real fun to it. So I'm using some of that gold washi tape just to add another kind of extra detail. This kind of reminds me of like a tiki hut. It's kind of rainbowy, but kind of like, it's got that like beach hut tiki vibes. I don't know, that's what I'm seeing when I look at this. So again, I've grabbed another one of my ephemera pieces, this time the little blonde girl with her surfboard, and I'm grabbing one of the sentiment stickers, which again, I'm just in love with. And this time I decided to use it straight on that card base, or on that patterned paper rather, so the patterned paper shines through. As if this card wasn't thick enough, I added some more foam behind the girl. And then I thought I was finished, but I figured I'd add just another layer of dimension because why not? So I grabbed one of the bows and I added some extra dimension to her bow. So you can see how those tassel pieces move, and when you do kind of part them, you can just see that patterned paper in the background. So I had to do some colouring, albeit this is very, very easy colouring. I grabbed a rainbow selection of Copic markers and then I coloured on the back of this printed vellum piece. So I wanted to colour in those lemons or limes. Depending on where you live, I don't know, am I making this up? But I feel like limes in England are green, but then in some countries lemons are green. So I don't know if this is a lemon or a lime, but I'm going to say it's a citrus fruit, and I decided to colour it in rainbow because why not? So I coloured on the back of the vellum, just following a rainbow order, which again, if you're in England, we remember our rainbow colours as Richard of York gave battle in vain, which I found out on that trip to Junkie Fest is quite amusing to some people, particularly in America. They'd never heard of that before, which makes sense given that Richard of York is kind of, it's our history. So it's a mini history lesson and the rainbow. Anyway, I digress. So I used my Xyron sticker machine, which is my favourite way to add adhesive to vellum, because you'll see here when I stick this down onto a white patterned paper, you can barely tell, I actually don't think you can tell at all where the adhesive is, which is really great because vellum can be tricky to stick down, especially if there aren't too many areas that you can hide adhesive behind. So now I'm working with a jewel picker and the sequin mix. I wanted to pick out all of those little fruit pieces. I love these, they're adorable. So I wanted to really showcase them. So I'm going fruit picking in that sequin mix, picking out all the pieces that I wanted and just sticking those down using multimedia matte. And then again, I'm grabbing another one of those epoxy stickers, and I'm going to go ahead and stick that down. Another great thing about these being completely transparent is you can figure out which one you want to use by just laying it over the top of your design and seeing what fits best. So really quick and easy, I just need to go ahead and take this panel. Oh, I forgot, there was another detail. So I wanted to use some of the washi tape. This is a foiled washi tape, and I ran this right around the outside edge, and I actually decided that it was a little bit too thick. So once I'd finished running this around the edges, I took this to my paper trimmer and I just trimmed off a little bit along each of the edges so the foiled washi tape ends up a lot thinner. Now, the finished result, I may as well have just used peel-offs because I end up making it super thin. But if you're after a super thick peel-off, then your foil washi tape will give you a similar effect. So I'm just adding adhesive and I'll stick this down to a yellow piece of cardstock. Again, I've said it a few times now, I was really enjoying the matting and layering this month. That was kind of the vibe that I was feeling, so I went with it. And then I will stick this whole entire piece down to another white card base. Again, just made by using US letter size cardstock, cutting it in half and scoring it in half so I can create that A2 sized note card of 4 1/4 by 5.5 inches. So I'll go ahead and line that up and press it down in place, and that is this card finished. Okay, so for this card I wanted to create a hillside scene to put the camper van ephemera piece on top of, and I figured, why can't my hills be pink chevron patterned paper? Of course they can. It's just a card, you can do whatever it is that you like. So I took a scrap of paper and I just freehand cut a sloping hill, and then I'm using the offcut to create the hill in the background. So I'm going to go ahead and add some adhesive and then layer those pieces to create that design. And I'm going to be working on this background paper. So I've got pink chevron hills and then I guess a pink and purple polka dot sky, because why not? So I'm going to go ahead and add some more adhesive to that first hill, or to the second hill, sorry, so it is nice and sticky and I can place it exactly where I want it. So I'm just figuring out how I want those two to sit together, and then I'll go ahead and trim off the excess and stick that down onto the card. I think it's a really great way to just with one pass of the scissors get that dimension of the foreground and the background. There are of course dies that will do this for you, but I had my scissors right there on my desk, so I just picked them up and it was just as easy. I'll go ahead and clean up those edges by trimming off the excess with my long scissors. And then I'm adding adhesive all over the back of this caravan piece. Is it not just beautiful? There is a caravan, it's slightly smaller in the stamp set. So of course I'm going to be using that on some future projects as well. I have another one of the epoxy stickers and I stuck that down to some of the hot pink cardstock that was included in the kit and then trimmed off the excess just so the background of that sentiment would be a different colour. And we are on to the next card. For this one I'm working directly on a white card base and I'm using a whole bunch of the smaller icons and images from each of the stamp sets that I have. I've masked off a section, so I'm going to create, you could do this with a patterned paper, but I wanted to do something a little bit different and use my embossing powders. So I arranged all of those tiny stamps and then picked them up with the lid of my Misty and inked them up with some Versamark ink that's just a clear sticky ink that's going to help my embossing powder stick. And of course I pre-prepped this area with my anti-static powder tool. So once I did my first lot of stamping, I dumped out my powder. You can see there was a little clump there as I poured the powder out. That is actually perfectly fine. If you've got all of your embossing powder in the jar, you can just give it, make sure the lid's on tight, but you can just give it a good shake and that will remove that clump. Sometimes it just kind of sticks together when it's been in the jar for a while. So whilst I was talking you through that, I went ahead and covered the first section in embossing powder just so I could see where I'd stamped, and then I went ahead and rearranged the stamps, inked them up, stamped them down and did the same thing, and now I'm just heat embossing the whole thing. So you can see it creates this really fun design on the background. You could do this over the entire card background if you wanted, or you could just use a patterned piece of paper in place of this, but I loved that pink embossing powder and I wanted to give it a try. So I grabbed my purple mirror peelies. These are the pinstripe, and I'm just going ahead and laying those down either side of the design, and you can see how it takes it from kind of just floating on the page there and maybe looking like it doesn't really belong to just framing it up really nicely and making it look like a cohesive design, which is exactly what I wanted to do with this piece here. Once I've saved those scraps, I've grabbed another one of the sentiments and I'm inking it up with my favourite sentiment ink, which is the Versafine Onyx Black, and just stamping down Hello Summer. To finish off with that white space above the sentiment, I grabbed another one of my girlies and I'm just using my multi-medium mat. I got a little bit too much on there, so I used my finger to kind of spread it out and thin it out. And then I'll go ahead and stick her down above the sentiment. She is so cute in that teeny tiny little bikini. So I went ahead and pressed that firmly to stick her in place, and that is this card finished. Okay, so for this next design, I knew I wanted to use this washi tape, but it didn't show up as kind of bold as I liked when I lay it directly across the patterned paper. So instead, I lay it onto some white cardstock and then trimmed around that piece. And you'll see here when I press that down in place, it just really pops off that background piece. I think because there's so much going on in that background, it reminds me of like a, I don't know, like an 80s, like a Saved by the Bell. Kind of a look to it. I don't know, but I really like that busy pattern, but it didn't lend itself well to allowing that washi tape to really pop, so it's easily fixed just with a little bit of white cardstock or paper behind the washi piece. And then of course I'm using some more of my peel-offs. Again, I got far too much glue in one section of that piece. I was really struggling with that multi-medium mat. I think when the bottle gets really empty, it can be difficult to judge how much you're squeezing out. So I'm working with the patterned paper and matting each piece in this hot pink cardstock. And I'm just layering those one on top of the other, so a really nice simple design. You could switch up the images that you use and the matting layer colours that you use and maybe make a whole note card set out of this design. I think that would be really fun and it would be really easy to do as well. You just want to make sure you stick everything down. Christy, I don't know how she gets her layers perfect every single time. That is some kind of card making magic for sure. You know, if you've seen her videos, what I'm talking about. All of her matting and layering is always perfectly symmetrical. Yeah, I need some of that. So I've covered this piece in the foam squares that came in the kit. I completely forgot that these were part of the kit. I found them at the bottom of the storage box that I use to keep all of my pieces together while I'm working on one of these 10 card 1 kit videos, and I was like, oh, there we go, foam squares, perfect. So I used those to stick down this little girl with her giant cheerleader hair, which I absolutely love. And I added one of these popsicles or ice lollies or lolly ices, whichever you prefer, into her hand. And then I'm going to go ahead and use one more of the epoxy stickers. I really hope these become a feature in the kits because I really love them. They're so much fun to use and so versatile. So then I'm taking this whole piece and sticking it down once again to a card base. And then that card is finished. So here I have a panel that's been cut down to be the same size as my card base, and I'm just trimming off a corner, and I'm actually going to work with this corner piece. I could use the rest on another card. And I'm going to go ahead and add adhesive all the way around the edge, and I'm working this time on the cream cardstock. I felt like the tone of this pattern paper worked really well with the tone of the cream, so that was why I decided to use those two together. And then I'm grabbing some more of that cream cardstock just as a layering piece behind the white. It's maybe a little strange to have cream and white, but I feel like it works. I knew that the outline of the ephemera piece was going to be white anyway, so I felt like if I stuck a white panel onto this piece, then it helped those two to kind of look like they belong together, rather than having the ephemera piece directly on top of the cream, where it maybe would have been a little bit too harsh of a contrast. Again, I'm grabbing another of these sentiments. I really liked the way that we had the two different sizes, and I'm going to stop saying really like because I've said it I don't know how many times, but it's so true. Okay, so again, a piece of pattern paper needs a peely, so I added one of the peel-offs along that edge, and then I covered, yes, I am a sucker for using too much foam. I can't help myself, but I like to think that if I were to send this in the post and it got a little bit smushed, it wouldn't sag or sink down in the middle, so it's really nice and sturdy. So I added a whole bunch of foam squares and then stick this piece down. This actually turned out to be one of my favourite designs. It's very, very simple, but I think what I really liked, this might sound a little bit silly, but just these three little dots and the way that they're on a diagonal pointing towards the corner of that piece where the girl is. I don't know, I really liked how that finished off this design. Then I'm adding just some more foam onto the back of this panel, and I'll go ahead and stick that down to a card base, and that is another super easy card completely finished. So for the final card, I went into my stash and I pulled out one of these Polaroid frames. I believe I actually got this in a previous Love From Lizi kit, and I've gone ahead and added adhesive all the way around the edges, and I just made sure that none of that was overhanging where I didn't want it to. And then I grabbed this acetate. This acetate is really clever. You see how the design looks, or it did look till I flipped it over, like gold horizontal stripes, but then on the other side it looks silver. So I decided to have the silver side facing out, and I knew I was going to use this little surfer chick. So I'm just figuring out how high I need to stick her on this patterned piece of paper so that she shows through enough and I don't kind of cut her off where I don't want to. And I'll go ahead and stick that down onto this patterned piece of paper. I'm then going to grab some strips of foam and stick those all around the outside. I cut that out because you don't need to sit and watch me do that. I'm just adding some foam strips all around the outside edge of the Polaroid, making sure that I have a nice sealed section in the middle for my sequins, and then just building up the rest of that section. So I'm going to go ahead and pour in the sequins, this time without any of the fruit pieces and just using the iridescent sequin mix, which is so very, very pretty, but it's not too overwhelming or overpowering, so it's not going to kind of hide too much of the design that's behind it. I made sure that they were relatively flat inside of that shaker piece, and then I'll go ahead and stick down the paper and just run my fingers around the outside edge to make sure it's got a really nice firm stick. Next I'll work on the card base, so I'll start off by applying adhesive all over the card base, and then I'm going to grab one of the 6x6 patterned papers. I went for a little bit more of a subtle design for this one because it's got so much going on with the shaker element. And then I'll just trim off the excess inside of my paper trimmer. Apologies, I'm a little bit out of frame here. I kept wanting to push everything kind of further up than my camera is usually set up. I don't know if I've moved my camera slightly, but apologies for anything that was off screen. I kept kind of correcting myself and pulling everything back. So I've gone ahead and stuck down the Polaroid, and then of course, last card, I'm going to go ahead and use one of these epoxy stickers, and I'll just fill in that section with one of the smaller ephemera pieces. I was trying to decide between the little cocktail or the flower, and I decided I liked the flower best. So I'm going to go ahead, no I didn't, I decided I liked the cocktail best. There we go. And so I'll add some adhesive to the back of that and go ahead and stick that down, and that is the final card finished. So now I'll just do a quick run through of each of the cards. Yes, I forgot to film a clip of me showing all of them, so instead I will show some still shots if that's okay. I had an awful lot of fun working with this kit. Apologies again that this video is so much later in the month than I usually post. I usually try to get my video up before the sneak peeks for the following month's kit start, but the good news is the next month's kit is released, as well as all the add-ons, tomorrow on the 19th. So treat this as your reminder to set the clocks for tomorrow so you can grab a hold of one of those kits if you're interested. Or you could go ahead and set up your subscription if you're watching this on the day it is posted, and that will guarantee that your first kit is the next one that is released tomorrow. Thank you so much for joining me. On screen right now are a couple more videos that I think you might enjoy. If you're not already subscribed, go ahead and tap the logo to subscribe, and I will see you back here again soon. That's all from me today. I'll see you again soon. Bye for now.